Gentlemen, welcome to our channel. If you, like me, do not support adultery and believes that cheaters should be fully responsible for their actions, then like this video and do not forget to subscribe to the channel. Well, let's get started. I am 27 years old and my ex-wife is 25. For the purposes of this story, we'll call her Kitty and I'll call Tom. I nicknamed her Kitty because of her cunning and insidious nature, resembling a cunning street cat. Our married life lasted a little more than 5 years, during which we had a son. For clarity, I will call him Junior, since he has the same name as me. Now the youngest is 4.5 years old. Our family life was quite prosperous until an unexpected event came as a shock to me. It is worth noting that I work for hire. I make $33 an hour and Kitty makes $17 an hour. Our standard of living is quite comfortable, a nice apartment and 2 relatively new cars. I've been working for my company since I graduated from high school, and Kitty returned to work 7 months ago after our youngest child, Junior, started attending kindergarten. At first, she worked 20 hours a week, but a few weeks before the important day, the so-called D-Day, she increased the number of working hours to 30 per week. I am the youngest of 4 children, and my parents are elderly. Both of them are retired now, and they help us by looking after Junior on the days when Kitty and I are working. They kindly give him a lift and pick him up from kindergarten, which allows us to achieve a wonderful harmony. Junior adores his grandparents and enjoys going to kindergarten, so he has never experienced anxiety from separation from us. But now I'm going to tell you about that unexpected moment when I realized that Kitty was cheating on me. Kitty has one female colleague whom I will call Nasty. Nastya, who is 31 years old, has already experienced 2 unsuccessful marriages. In addition, she has a child who mostly lives with her first husband. Unfortunately, I found myself in a situation where Kitty had a strong professional connection with Nastya. Despite my doubts, Kitty said that Nastya is very qualified in her work and has devoted 12 years to the company. Nastya played an important role in training new employees, as a result of which she and Kitty met for the first time. Although they didn't spend time together outside of work, they often exchanged messages after work and on weekends. Sometimes she came to visit us. My first meeting with Nastya took place during a corporate picnic, and I immediately felt a negative energy from her. To clarify the context of the nickname unpleasant, it is worth mentioning that she has gone through 2 divorces and does not have custody of her child. She also lives with a male companion, with whom she maintains a relationship on the principle of friends with privileges. In addition, she and her friend with benefits often change partners with other couples and enter into individual relationships with those with whom they want, given the nature of their relationship. The whole situation disgusts me, and I have repeatedly expressed my disapproval to Kitty. In response, Kitty admitted that she does not approve of Nastya's personal choice, but appreciates her as a colleague, since Nastya provided her with significant assistance in various issues of implementing her plans. I didn't mind that Kitty was familiar with Nastya from work, because their communication was limited to this context. Now I will tell you more about the first suspicion of infidelity Kitty. It happened on Saturday morning when Nastya unexpectedly came to visit Kitty. There was nothing special about it, since Nastya was not far from us with shopping and decided to stop by to give Kitty something. Nastya had already visited our apartment a couple of times under similar circumstances, and it didn't bother me. I love my son, I am polite and kind to him, so everything seems to be fine. At that time, my wife and Nesty talked in the kitchen for about 20 minutes, after which Nastya had to leave. Kitty escorted Nastya to the car, and they continued the conversation, while Junior and I stayed in the living room, fascinated by watching cartoons. While leaving, Kitty accidentally left her phone on the nightstand, and soon it began to issue a series of text notifications. At first, I didn't pay attention to the first ping, but after the 3rd message came, I decided to take a look. However, there was nothing terrible in this situation. We knew each other's passwords perfectly well and freely exchanged our devices. But the most important thing that caught my attention was the peculiar nature of the texts. All of them were written by Nastya, but in some form, in the form of code. Strangely, at that moment, I looked out the window and saw that Nastya was talking to Kitty, which excluded the possibility that she was the sender. Intrigued, I studied the messages more closely and noticed that some of them were marked as from Nastya with a plus sign, while others were just from Nastya. This mismatch of the sender's name, as well as different numbers, immediately alerted me something is wrong. Watching Kitty return to the apartment, I quickly wrote down both numbers available in her phone, decided to look into this issue in more detail. Although I had originally planned to question Kitty as soon as she returned to the house, I decided to be patient and conduct additional investigation first. Upon arrival, Kitty joined Junior and me and started watching TV. About 15 minutes later, she received another text message forcing her to take out her phone and examine its contents. She said that the message was from Nastya, in which she said that she would like to enjoy our company with Junior again. I asked Kitty to send the same message, and she started typing. After sending a message to Nastya, I saw Kitty enthusiastically reading the previously missed messages. A wide smile graced her face as she scanned the messages. Quickly writing a short reply, she smiled with satisfaction and put the phone aside. Catching my eye, Kitty came up to me and kissed me lovingly on the lips, after which she settled down between Junior and me. The rest of the weekend passed without any significant events. Despite the pleasant family leisure, my thoughts were absorbed by the disturbing messages from Nastya Plus. While Kitty was tidying up after Sunday dinner, I couldn't resist the temptation to investigate further. I surreptitiously picked up her phone and plunged into conversations. To my horror, I saw that only yesterday she replied to the message Nastya Plus with the code 29YOY. Upon further examination, I noticed that all their exchanges followed the same pattern. After a two-digit number, either YY or YN followed. Perplexed, I could not decipher the meaning of these code messages. Suspecting foul play, I decided to find out the true identity of Nastya Plus. On Monday morning, I used the office phone to dial a mysterious number. Anonymity was ensured, as calls from our landlines were displayed on the caller ID as unknown or private. When I called, the call was forwarded to voicemail, where a male voice introduced himself as John Jones. John, Kitty's colleague whom I met at the picnic, was never mentioned by her. This made me suspect that Kitty was cheating on me with John, and their encrypted messages seemed to be a secret code for arranging meetings. After further investigation, I realized that the number in the messages meant the date of the month. In addition, the initial letter denoted a certain part of Kitty's body, and the Y or N at the end indicated whether they would meet or not. I found a photo of him with Nastya, which confirmed that they knew each other. This gave me some confidence that they would meet at John's after work on the 29th. But I couldn't gather much information about him from his minimal social media presence. There was only one photo in his profile, and all his friends were hidden. In search of details, I decided to look at Nastya's page. To my surprise, I came across a photo of him with Nastya, which indicated that they were somehow connected. While studying the phone, I came across a photo of Nastya and her constant friend, as well as a certain John Jones with his girlfriend. Thinking about whether to inform John's girlfriend about his relationship with Kitty, I couldn't help but think that all of them, like Nasty, could be involved in intimate relationships between each other. It occurred to me that she might not be bothered by his date with Kitty, and might even be interested. In this regard, I decided to take matters into my own hands and conduct detective work. On the 29th, I decided to leave work early and park near my wife's workplace, patiently waiting for her departure. I quietly followed her in my car so that she would not notice my presence. Unfortunately, I lost sight of her in the dense traffic, but armed with John's address, which could be quickly found in a search engine, I headed there. When I drove up to the street, it became clear that this is a quiet residential area. Driving past the house, I didn't find Kitty's car anywhere. Disappointed, I reached the end of the cul-de-sac and, making a U-turn, headed back home. When I got to my apartment, Kitty was nowhere to be found, and I waited patiently for a few minutes. After that, I decided to call my mom to find out how things were going. She reassured me that everything was fine and mentioned that Dad had taken our son fishing in the pond behind our house. According to her calculations, they would be back in 30 minutes, just in time for Kitty to pick them up. We chatted for a while on random topics, after which the conversation was over. Strangely, an inexplicable feeling made me return to John's house. I drove back and drove by again, but they were not in sight. In the end, I turned into a dead end. Walking back down the street to the house, I saw that Kitty's car had backed out of the driveway and the garage doors had closed behind her. In order not to be noticed, I immediately stopped and watched her drive up the street. Despite the considerable distance between us, I knew unmistakably that it was her. Anger overwhelmed me at that moment. I was on the verge of committing a terrible act, but miraculously kept calm. I continued to return home and arrive before Kitty and Junior. When she came, she was surprised by my presence. I told her about my early retirement from work, wanting to spend time with loved ones. My gaze was riveted on her in the hope of seeing any peculiarities of behavior, but there were none. When she kissed me gently, I felt a pleasant freshness, as if she had recently taken a shower. I reluctantly accepted her caress, realizing that refusal could arouse suspicion. And while she was having fun cooking dinner, I spent time in the family room chatting with Junior. When dinner was ready, she invited us to gather at the table, saying a sincere prayer of gratitude for the food and expressing gratitude for her husband and son. When the evening was over and Junior went to bed, she tried to initiate a moment of intimacy, but I tactfully rejected her attempts, trying not to arouse suspicion. Deciding to go to bed earlier than usual, I waited until she fell asleep and discreetly checked her phone, as I had noticed the notification sound earlier. I came across another message from Nastya Plus, accompanied by a thumbs up and the inscription, 31 I like. It suddenly flashed through my head that Nastya Plus is none other than John. This indicated that they were planning to meet on the 31st, but I decided to take matters into my own hands and meet them face to face, hoping to catch them red-handed. The next day I went about my usual business at work, but in the evening before going home, I stopped by my parents to tell them about what had happened. Needless to say, they were extremely upset and worried about this news. They couldn't believe what they heard. I told them that I was planning to meet Kitty and her lover the next day. Then my mother intervened in the conversation, who urged me to be careful and offered to take my father with me to prevent any nonsense on my part. Without hesitation, the father readily agreed. On the appointed day, I left work early again and picked up my father. Together, we headed to Kitty's place of work, patiently waiting for her to come out and discreetly following her car from afar. She drove to John's house. When the door closed behind her, a wave of disgust washed over Dad and me, fueling my growing frustration. We decided to park a few houses away and wait 10 minutes before approaching the front door. There was a modern video call installed in the house, and I pressed the button while banging on the door with all my might. Going straight to the camera, I stared into it and sternly addressed John. I know perfectly well that you are inside with Kitty, and I perfectly understand what you are up to. Open the door. There was silence in response to my request. Turning to his father, he demanded, "Give me your keys." I asked him what he wanted to do, to which he replied that he was going to move the car and put it in front of the entrance. After that, the father looked into the cell and said that if they did not answer, then we would wait patiently until they appeared. After my father moved the car, we sat on the hood and waited patiently. During all this time, I tried to contact Kitty through calls and messages, but received no response. After waiting for about 20 minutes, I decided to contact Kitty's parents and told them about the situation. Subsequently, they immediately arrived at the scene of the events. About 10 minutes later, my father and I were joined by a woman who arrived in her car with a puzzled expression on her face. It dawned on me that this was probably John's girlfriend, whom I would call Betty. When I got to her car, I noticed that she hesitantly lowered the window. When I introduced myself and explained the situation, tears welled up in her eyes, and she became visibly agitated. Trying to comfort her, I directed her to the garage door, which she opened and looked inside. Looking outside, I saw that my wife's car was parked next to her lover's Camry. When she saw this sight, she began to beat furiously on the steering wheel, uttering abusive words. Tears flowed down her face. She quickly parked the car on the street and walked to the front door, clutching the key tightly. When we opened the door, we saw John and Kitty standing in the foyer fully dressed with an innocent expression on their faces, as if they didn't understand what was going on. John broke the silence and spoke. "We were just talking to Kitty about business." And then Betty, without saying a word, suddenly pounced on him. She pounced on him mercilessly, forcefully tearing off and shattering his glasses, and at the same time shouting at him to leave. John made no attempt to defend himself, and Betty continued to strike blow after blow. In the end, he managed to get to his car, quickly get into it, and close the doors, being safe. Betty grabbed a metal garden rake and aggressively swung it at the car, damaging the side mirror, windshield wiper, and leaving dents and scratches on the driver's door. After a few minutes, I managed to calm her anger, although she was still furious. Throughout the incident, Kitty stood on the lawn in front of the house and cried, and her parents asked questions about her presence and actions. Turning my attention to Kitty, I told her that there was no need to explain anything since I was already aware of the whole situation. After that, I firmly told her that returning home was out of the question and our relationship was over. As a result, she burst into tears and tried to find comfort from her mother, who coldly told her to leave. In a fit of fear, Kitty began to rush down the street, sobbing uncontrollably, after which she quickly disappeared into her car. After that, I had a conversation with her parents, informing them that custody of Junior remains with me and she is forbidden to visit my apartment. At the same time, I made it clear to them that I am always happy to see them, but until our legal issues are resolved, she is not allowed to enter. After that, my father and I left, and he got behind the wheel because I was too upset. We went back to my parents' house and told my mom about what had happened. My heart was pounding hard and my blood pressure was probably going through the roof. I was so excited that I almost threw up, but the sight of Junior brought me comfort. As soon as he noticed me, he rushed to me and hugged me, which caused my emotions to subside quickly. About an hour later, the incessant calls from Kitty began. I refrained from answering her questions, although I found time to listen to several of her voice messages. In these messages, she expressed sincere regret, tearfully admitted that her actions were a serious mistake, and promised never to repeat them. She begged to be given the opportunity to improve and even talked about her intention to quit her job the next day in the hope of starting our life with a clean slate. I decided to reply to her with one message, advising her to contact a lawyer since I had decided to start the divorce process. Despite my clear answer, she didn't stop trying to contact me during the night, which made me turn off my phone and ignore her messages. I decided to take a break from work and not take Junior to kindergarten for the whole day. Together with my parents, we visited the science center where we had long wanted to take him. It seemed to me that it would be a useful and pleasant experience for all of us. The time spent there was fantastic, and Junior was absolutely delighted with this place. Evening was approaching. I sat down with Junior and gently explained that Mom would stay with other grandparents for a while, and he and I would stay here with grandparents for that time. He agreed that he would visit his mother several times a week without any complaints. He was happy with this state of things because he had his own room in my parents' house where he was surrounded by love and attention. Curiously, he asked if his mother was ill. Although I knew the truth, I explained that she and I needed to settle some things, and when we settled them, he would visit her more often, but she would have her own apartment. Although he didn't quite understand what was going on, he accepted my explanation and returned to his video game. Then everything went smoothly. I agreed to meet Kitty at her parents' house, accompanied by my father, both for support and as a witness. At first, Kitty tried to justify her actions, but I quickly talked her out of it because it doesn't make any difference. I firmly said that what I had done could not be undone, and therefore I decided to divorce her. Despite her pleas to give her another chance, I stood firm, making it clear that there would be no second chance and that our divorce was inevitable. In addition, I told her that our baby Junior will live with me and my parents until all issues are resolved. During our conversation, Kitty told me that if I divorced her, she would feel deprived of a purpose in life. Concerned, I decided to engage her parents and my father in conversation by sharing with them what Kitty had told me. Emotionally overwhelmed, Kitty sat on the couch with her head down and tears streaming down her face. Her mother came up to her, comforting her and offering support. At that moment, Kitty's father entered into the conversation, who said that he intended to find this man named John Jones and make sure that he was responsible for his actions towards Kitty. But I strongly asked him not to seek retribution, as it is not worth it. Despite this tense situation, Kitty's father and I maintain a good relationship. I expressed my concern to him, stressing that I did not want him to face any consequences. After our conversation, my father and I left. I didn't get any messages from Kitty that night, but the next morning she left me a voice message saying that she had decided to quit her job. I decided not to answer, but inwardly I couldn't help but worry about the financial burden that would now fall on me. Despite the lack of an answer, Kitty continued to contact me, mainly on questions related to Junior, to which I sometimes gave an answer. I met with a lawyer and gave him permission to file an application. In our state, infidelity is of great importance in divorce, so my lawyer assured me that we have a good reason to file a statement with the help of two witnesses, my father and Betty. A few days later, something unexpected happened. Nastya, Kitty's former colleague, called me. She expressed her regrets about the situation that had developed between Kitty and me, and admitted that she felt guilty for what had happened. According to her, she advised Kitty to think about entering into a friends with benefits relationship with John. She also said that she and John had previously had a relationship, but it ended. Although John wanted to resume their relationship, she refused. As a result, she introduced him to Kitty, who showed curiosity to consider the possibility of a relationship like a free, intimate relationship. This led to the beginning of their relationship. I was shocked when she suggested that Kitty's relationship with another was just a physical release that could improve our marriage. It was impossible to believe that she was trying to give me this absurd idea. I interrupted her, unable to stand her words any longer, and strongly expressed my contempt for her, Kitty, John, and everyone else involved in such disgusting behavior. They were just disgusting personalities, and I made it clear that I didn't want to talk to her anymore. I immediately stopped the conversation and blocked her number. What was she thinking when she shared such outrageous thoughts with me? I received another unexpected phone call, but this time it contained valuable information. The caller turned out to be Betty, who wanted to tell me the latest news and find out about my well-being. Betty told about an amazing incident that happened after everyone left her house on D-Day. To her surprise, she found a bag with a prohibited substance on the dresser in the bedroom. Not knowing what to do, she turned to her father for advice, who advised her to contact the authorities. Following her father's advice, Betty immediately contacted the police, explaining that the substance did not belong to her. Having kicked her ex-boyfriend and his girlfriend Kitty out of the house earlier, Betty explained that the substance found had to belong to one of them. She further said that John, who is now 37 years old, had a criminal record for beatings at the age of 22. Despite the fact that Betty thought he turned his life around, she gave him a chance and eventually fell in love with him. Now, feeling foolish, she realized that he was taking advantage of her hospitality, in fact, living in her house rent-free. He was cheating and betraying her without even realizing it. I reassured her not to blame herself too harshly because I too was deceived by Kitty. We both promised ourselves never to be deceived again. In the evening, I decided to talk to Kitty and her parents about the information that Betty had shared with me. To ensure transparency, I took my father with me as a witness. Perhaps Kitty thought that I would come to make peace, but when I revealed the purpose of my visit, she could not hold back her tears. She categorically denied any involvement in John's criminal past and insisted that she had no information about the substance. I was extremely indignant and told her what a huge risk she had put us at. She admitted her mistake and constantly apologized. In order to ensure our safety, I firmly said that she would not be allowed to see Junior until she passed a comprehensive test for the use of prohibited substances. Despite the fact that she continued to cry, in the end she agreed to take the test without any additional persuasion on my part. I told my lawyer that my wife's lover has a criminal record. At first, the lawyer showed disapproval, but then, surprisingly, regarded this news as favorable. Combined with the information about Kitty's infidelity, this new information could increase my chances of obtaining full custody of Junior if we achieve this. Thinking over possible options, I pondered what to do next, whether to insist on full custody. Despite the lawyer's urgent demands to present all the evidence, I remained uncertain and indecisive. I understood that certain actions could negatively affect Kitty, and I did not want to harm her. At the same time, It was necessary to take into account that she is the mother of our son. Kitty's parents begged me to refrain from this step, offering an alternative option in which Junior would stay with me for 4 days, and Kitty, 3, divided in the proportion of 60/40. In the end, I listened to my lawyer's advice and allowed Kitty to present evidence to the judge, highlighting the fact that she was in a romantic relationship with a convicted criminal. In addition, as evidence, she submitted a police report on the discovery of prohibited substances in John's house. Kitty's lawyer raised an objection, stating that these substances do not belong to her client, and stressed that her client refrains from taking any prohibited or prescribed drugs. In addition, Kitty's lawyer presented copies of 2 tests for the use of prohibited drugs conducted immediately after the incident, which showed negative results. Having carefully studied the information provided, the judge considered it appropriate and accordingly ruled in favor of satisfying the divorce claim. I was given primary custody of Junior, and I arranged for him to stay with me from Tuesday to Saturday, and Kitty on Sundays and Mondays. As a result, Junior and I moved into a new apartment, conveniently located just a 5-minute drive from my parents' house, and it was wonderful. Kitty still lives with her parents and has recently started working at the church her family attends. In addition, she sincerely accepted her religion and, apparently, this had a positive impact on her life and helped to find stability. In addition to working in the church, Kitty devotes her time to teaching Sunday school and Bible school during the holidays. Junior is happy to accompany Kitty and her family to church, willingly participating in exciting Sunday school classes designed for preschool children. But due to the fact that Kitty recently changed jobs and received a lower salary, and the cost of living in this area is prohibitively high, she will have to continue living with her parents if she does not find a roommate. I hope that she will prefer to stay with my former relatives, as it is safer for me to know that Junior is in safe hands when Kitty takes custody. In addition, I forgot to mention that the judge has not appointed any alimony in connection with the betrayal, and alimony is not required because most of the week the son is in my care. Overall, I would say that our current situation is relatively favorable, although I wish none of these sad events had happened, and I still miss Kitty sometimes. Kitty finally realized that we would never make up. Despite the strong desire confirmed by her parents, she no longer brings up this topic during our meetings, which is good news. As for me, I haven't made any acquaintances, and I'm not going to do it in the near future. I will focus on taking care of Junior and making progress in my career. In addition, I have set myself a short-term goal, to save money for a down payment on a house. First of all, I want to clarify that Betty and I have not entered and are not going to enter into any romantic relationship. We just don't find each other compatible, but I'm very grateful to her for the help she gave me in this matter. Betty took the initiative to inform John's company about his affair with Kitty and the discovery of illegal substances in her house. As a result, John was fired from his position a few days later. Although Betty did not know the exact reason for the dismissal, she suggested that the company could have conducted a random test for the use of prohibited substances, which may have been the reason for the dismissal. Betty recently informed me that Nastya no longer works for this company. Although she does not know the exact reason, she humorously suggested that it could be due to Nastya's romantic relationship with her colleagues, which does not surprise me. But not everything ended so well for Kitty. Even the fact that she was atoning for her sins by working and devoting most of her time to the church, karma overtook her. As it turned out later, she contracted hepatitis C from John, who was previously a jailer. I was shocked by this news and was grateful for my caution in protecting myself during intimacy with Kitty after the birth of my son, since we did not want to rush the appearance of a second child. Kitty will remember her actions in torment until the end of her days. Gentlemen, thank you for your time. Put likes and subscribe to the channel. See you soon.